as you'll bring the statement next week.
I will do that, Honorable Speaker. And just to, you instructed us to call the Inspector General on Monday over the Sakaja issue.
You can combine this.
So I know we will have an opportunity even to pass the same. And if the member will also wish, he can as well maybe attend so that we can able to, meanwhile, having some intervention to be undertaken.
Honorable Gitari, the IG will be before the committee on Monday. You can go there and prosecute your statement. Sigay? Sorry, Karemba?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am concerned because as you put to task the chair of the National Security Committee to invite the Inspector General, I'm concerned that in the past I have raised a matter here through seeking for a statement, and that matter has not been responded to me.
On security?
Not on security, but on agriculture, the escalating prices of animal feeds. I raised that matter before we went on recess, but I have not been...
before the long recess?
Yes,
it died there.
It died there?
Yes, you better resurrect it. You are free to resurrect it and bring it back.
All right.
Yes.
I'll go back to the drawing board.
Okay. Sigay?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 14(2)C, I rise to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Head Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives regarding the status of upgrading the new Kenya Cooperative Creameries milk processor in Zoti constituency. Honorable Speaker, the government between 2018 and 2022 spent approximately Kenya shillings 2 billion to modernize some of the new Kenya Cooperative Creameries factories in 7 counties to build capacity for dairy farmers. Among these, the Sotik factory, which is a milk processing plant, was modernized as it serves dairy farmers from Bomet, Narok, Kericho, Nyamira, and Kuresoi. The upgrading of the plant was projected to increase earnings of the dairy farmers from Kenya shillings 850,000 to 1.5 billion Kenya shillings a year, and increase the processing capacity of the plant from 60,000 liters to 100,000 liters of milk per day. However, since its upgrading by the government, these projections are yet to be realized, and the welfare of the employees over the years has stagnated, considering the high standard of living. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives on the following. 1, a report on the status of the upgrading of the new Kenya Cooperative Creameries factories, particularly the milk processing plant, including the current earnings of dairy farmers since its upgrading, and measures put in place to implement buying of milk from dairy farmers at Kenya shillings 55 to increase their earnings and attract more deliveries. 2, the steps taken to address low wages of casuals at the new Kenya Cooperative Creameries factories, considering the high cost of living, and inflation in the country, including payment of overtime allowances as required by law. 3, the measures put in place to create participation by dairy farmers to be more involved in processes of the new Kenya cooperative creameries for effective operations and access. 4, a report on the products produced at Sotik milking processing plant and plans put in place to vary the type of products manufactured, including plans for maintenance of machines processing the products such as mala. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Ambassador Sigei. Chair, Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. Yes, Chepalungu.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As I rise to support the statement from Honorable Sigei, it is important also as this House.
I thought you are raising your hand as a member of the Trade Committee.
No, I was raising
You are a joyrider.
as a member of Parliament from Chepalungu.
Okay, you can joyride.
And all the, yes. Thank you, Speaker. And all the milk that we produce from Chepalungu constituency equally goes to Sotik factory, the KCC in Sotik. And as I rise to support him, it is important as well as this House, we have always been budgeting money that is supposed to go to improve the cost of milk buying from the ordinary mwananchi. And it is so sorry, Mr. Speaker, as we speak, second year running, the same amount that was used to buy milk in the initial years, that was between 30 and 40 shillings, is still the amount that this particular KCC is still buying milk from our mwananchi. And that is why today, this particular statement is very important, dear and close to ourselves, because even as Chepalungu constituency, the only source of income that is reliable is milk. So, Speaker, it is important that we put to task this the Trade Committee to ensure that what we set as this House goes directly to mwananchi, because it is sorry that we're still buying milk from a common mwananchi at a cost of 35 shillings, while the President and ourselves have set a target that we should be buying this particular milk at the cost of 50 shillings or above. Thank you, Speaker.
Who is here from Trade? You're gone. I don't want debate on a statement. Adagala, you are from the Trade Committee?
Yes.
Can you bring a response in 2 weeks?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. We are guided.
Thank you. Honorable Stephen Mogaka, West Mukirango.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make a statement regarding the state of bitumen roads in Nyamira County. The Honorable Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 44, subsection 2C, and wish to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure regarding construction of bitumen roads in Nyamira County.
If you want your constituents to know what you are saying, why don't you just say tarmac roads? You think village has no bitumen roads?
Thank you so much. I will call them black roads if tarmac is not audible. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for that guidance, because really the constituents need to know that we are talking about tarmac roads. Mr. Speaker, road infrastructure development is vital in the economic development of our country. Unfortunately, there has been a great disparity in construction of tarmac roads in various counties, Nyamira County included. For instance, Mr. Speaker, the roads in West Mogrango constituency have been in dire need of upgrading to tarmac standards for more than 15 years now, but they continue to be skipped whenever budgets are made, despite other neighboring constituencies and counties benefiting from the said tarmac roads. The delay in rehabilitation has caused significant challenges, Mr. Speaker, to road users and has severely affected residents by hindering the flow of human traffic, goods, and services within the area. Mr. Speaker, it is against this background that I humbly request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure on the following. 1, to table a report detailing all roads that have been approved for upgrading to tarmac standards in Nyamira County and specifically in West Mogrango constituency, which hosts the county headquarters, and these should include the status of construction of those tarmac roads, if any. Number 2, I'm asking for measures being taken by the government, including affirmative action, to address the disparities in road infrastructure development, particularly in the deprived West Mogrango constituency. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I'm looking from the committee chair for the long-term plans being implemented to rehabilitate and expand critical roads in West Mogrango constituency, Nyamira County, particularly because this is the headquarters of the county, and it is ridiculous when adjoining counties or constituencies, Mr. Speaker, have bitumen roads, and when they get to the headquarters, they enter into muddy roads. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to make this statement.
Thank you, Honorable Mogaka. Chair Rhodes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. We'll respond in about 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
2 weeks, yes.
Thank you. Milemba Omboko, Member Mhaya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Request for a statement regarding the delay in payment of allowances to teachers contracted to oversee the 2024 national examinations and assessments. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to provisions of Standing Order 44.2c, I wish to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Education regarding the delay in payment of allowances to teachers contracted to oversee 2024 national examinations and assessments. Honorable Speaker, the Kenya National Examination Council, NEC, engaged teachers to oversee the 2024 Kenya Certificate of Primary Education, KCPE, Kenya Primary School Education Assessment, CAPSEA, and the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education, KCSE. Examinations in various roles, such as center managers, supervisors, and vigilators. Although the results for the said examinations and tests have since been released, the conducted teachers have not yet received their allowances for the services they rendered. These teachers have expressed considerable frustration and dissatisfaction regarding NEC delay in dispersing the payments, an issue which remains unsolved despite numerous requests and interventions by teachers. Honorable Speaker, it is claimed that the delay in the payment is attributed to insufficient and incomplete details provided by the teachers who invigilated and supervised the 2024 national examinations and assessments. While NEC Chief Executive Officer dismissed claims of loss of data of the national examinations officials, there still has been no progress in resolving their outstanding allowances. Honorable Speaker, it's against this background that I request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Education on the following. 1, reasons for delay in settling allowances of center managers, vigilators, supervisors, examiners of the 2024 KCPE, CAPSEA, KCSE examinations long after release of the results of the said examinations and assessment tests. 2, status of all registers and data by the Kenya National Examination Council, NEC, has complete registers and data from all the 2024 national examination centers, including details of the contracted center managers, invigilators, supervisors, and examiners. And thirdly, Honorable Speaker, action being taken by the ministry to ensure timely payment of allowances to teachers contracted to oversee national examinations before the start of the 2025 national exams and measures in place to avert recurrent delays in payment of such allowances. Honorable Speaker, teachers are ever punished because of the delay. The results came long time ago. Teachers have never been paid. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Bukose, on the same issue.
Honorable Speaker, I stand to support this statement by Honorable Omboko Milemba, who is a former teacher and is also a trade unionist and a member of parliament for Emuhaya. Honorable Speaker, it is very unfortunate that this is not the first time that this issue is happening. And normally, even before students sit for exams, they pay for that examination. And therefore, what it means is that they have the money, and they have no reason as to why teachers who are the examiners, invigilators, and center managers go for long periods. You know, they have spent their money to even go to those places to invigilate or to supervise those examinations. And now they have to wait for a longer period for that money to be paid. I think this is a very unfortunate incident. And more often, Honorable Speaker, even you as you go home, you normally find when you are in Kitale, teachers are approaching you and telling you our money is delaying. So I think this is something that the chair of the committee must bring to an end. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Dorothy, you want to joyride on this?
Honorable Speaker, I stand in support of this very important statement. Honorable Speaker, teachers are the backbone of education in this country. Honorable Speaker, it is extremely frustrating when teachers invigilate, supervise, they become center managers with the hope and expectation that their dues will be sorted out immediately they are through with marking of the examination. Honorable Speaker, the Kenya National Examination Council is hiding behind very flimsy excuses. It is the high time, Honorable Speaker, that we call out on the Kenya National Examination Council to style up and pay teachers in a very timely manner so that we have a very smooth flow of examination marking and supervising in subsequent years. Honorable Speaker, we call out on the ministry, on the Kenya National Examination Council to pay these supervisors, center managers, and invigilators within the shortest time possible, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you.
I support.
Education, Majority Leader, that is a matter that you should, in effect, take up. The money is paid by students. It is ring-fenced. It's for printing exams, transporting exams, paying invigilators, paying markers. It is not money from a budget from this house. It is not money from the exchequer. It is ring-fenced money. Why do they delay paying them? I think it should be taken up at your level to find out why this happens. You know, each one of us here has a relationship with a teacher. You are either taught by a teacher, you're a son of a teacher, you're a brother of a teacher, a sister of a teacher, or your campaign manager was a teacher. I would direct you, Majority Leader, don't leave it to the education chairman, take it up yourself and bring us a response, a comprehensive statement, not only about the unpaid bills, but future conduct of examinations in relation to this matter. Thank you. Next, yourself now.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Most obliged. I will make sure we get a statement from the Kenya National Examinations Council and the Ministry of Education, because as you rightly say, students have already paid for these exams. Most of those in private schools, as members, you remember during the 2017 campaigns, the then President Uhuru Kenyatta committed that all students in public schools would have their examinations paid for by the government of Kenya. So I probably want to believe maybe his exchequer challenges on the public sector schools. But we will get a formal and comprehensive statement to give next week or latest the week after Tuesday. Now to the usual Thursday statement. Honorable Speaker, on behalf of the House Business Committee, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 44-2A to give the Thursday statement on the House Business Committee scheduling of work for the week commencing next week. Honorable Speaker, with regard to business scheduled for Tuesday next week, the House is expected to continue with the consideration of the National Police Service Commission Amendment Bill of 2024 and the Basic Education Bill Amendment Bill of 2023 at second reading. Additionally, Honorable Speaker, debate will be undertaken on the following motions, some of which are listed in today's order paper. 1 is the reconstitution of other lapsed committees. 2, consideration of the report of the National Dialogue Committee and the report of the multi-sectoral working group on the realization of the 2/3 gender principle. 3 is report on the public petition on legal recognition and protection of e-hailing motorcycle riders and delivery personnel. And 4, report on the state of security in 6 counties of North Rift being Baringo, Elgeyo Marakwet, Turkana, West Pokot, Samburu, and Laikipia. Honorable Speaker, I wish to remind the House that following the extension of time granted last week, we ought to conclude with the consideration of the 2025 debt management strategy before the end of next week. And that is especially so for chairs and members of departmental committees that are considering this 2025 debt management strategy. And also, I see the vice chair of the debt committee. I don't see him, Honorable Makali Mulu and Shuria are not in the House, but they are well appraised. I think they have had a committee sitting on the same. And as such, once the liaison committee tables its reports, it will be prioritized for debate in the course of the week, and this will pave the way for consideration of the budget policy statement in the subsequent week. Finally, Honorable Speaker, the House Business Committee will reconvene again next week, Tuesday, 4th March, to schedule business for the rest of that week. Now I wish to lay this statement on the table of the House. And Honorable Speaker, I know Tuesday we have the funeral service of one of our colleagues, the late Malulu Ijendi, and I know quite a number of members may be planning to attend. Therefore, it will be a light afternoon because we may not all be able to go to Malava and be able to make it back by 2:30. But the House sittings will proceed as usual, and but on light business, Honorable Speaker, and wish all those who will be traveling with us to Malava safe travels. Those who are traveling tomorrow, the day after tomorrow to Baringo, to lay to rest the late senator for Baringo, also Honorable Speaker, this Saturday. And we continue praying for their families as we condole them and pray for them to have the fortitude and strength to continue with their lives, even in the absence of our departed colleagues, their families, and also the constituents of Malava constituency and Baringo County who have lost the members who represent them in this House and in the Senate. With that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay.
Yes, Ruku.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise on a point of order pursuant to Standing Order 83, then together with the Standing Order 42A5. And the Standing Order 42A5 provides as follows: the Leader of Majority Party shall inform the House of the date, time, and order in which the Cabinet Secretary shall appear to reply to the questions and provide reports to the House and committees. Honorable Speaker, I carefully listened to the statement by the Leader of Majority Party, on the business for next week, and I did not hear any mention of appearance of a cabinet secretary before this house, particularly the cabinet secretary for health. I'm saying so because the country is facing a potential crisis, Mr. Speaker, in the health sector, which with the private hospitals having threatened to cease attending patients under the chair because of failures and resolved concern. Honorable Speaker, while it is the duty of the Ministry of Health to deal with the matters of health, we, the members of Parliament, as the representatives of the people, have found ourselves at the first line of defense, and Kenyans are bashing us for the failures in the health sector. Kenyans think that since we are the ones who passed the laws that transition the NHIF to shift and share, we ought to take responsibility when things don't work, and not the Ministry of Health. Mr. Speaker, when we passed the Social Health Insurance Act and created shift and share, we intended that our people would easily access quality and affordable health care. However, the perennial and unresolved teething issues affecting the transition from NHIF to shift and share is limiting the enjoyment of right of health under the Article 43(1)(a) of the Constitution, and by extension, the right to life under the Article 26 of the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, I hope that in a statement, the Leader of Majority Party would, as priority, inform us that the Cabinet Secretary of Health would appear before this House next week to address many concerns by Kenyans and the health facilities regarding the service delivery under SHA. Honorable Speaker, I humbly seek your indulgence and direction that the Cabinet Secretary of Health be summoned to this House next week on Wednesday, 5th February 2025, to address many issues affecting the health sector. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Ruku, what you've read appears to be a statement that should have reached my desk for approval. In the guise of a point of order, you've sought a statement, and that is not very honorable. Yes, Majority Leader.
Indeed, Honorable Speaker, I wanted to agree with you that the Honorable Ruku is completely out of order, because he seems to be raising a statement under the disguise of other things. First, the Honorable Ruku has not filed any question or request for a statement for the Minister of Health to appear before this House. And the Leader of Majority, in line with our own standing orders, cannot, on his own volition, invite a Cabinet Secretary to come appear here to be questioned by Ruku, Honorable Ruku. I only do that pursuant to Honorable Ruku filing a question or a statement, then I file. The only question that has been filed this sitting on health is by the member for Yatta, the Honorable Robert Basil. And the issues that he wanted addressed were comprehensively addressed by the statement, which was tabled, was it yesterday or the day before, by Honorable Pukose, the chair of the Health Committee. The Honorable Ruku was seated right where he seated when the Honorable Pukose was reading that very comprehensive statement. And I want to believe, probably invite Honorable Ruku, if there are issues, he may get a copy from the table office of the statement that was tabled. And if there is anything that was not addressed, he is at liberty to file a statement or a question that the CS can come and answer. But also, just for information to the House, all the questions and statements that had been sought last year, as you are told, they have all lapsed. We have, with the exception of that one question from the Health Ministry, we have a total of another 22 questions, at least one per ministry, and we are just waiting for the ministers and the departmental committees to finish, because, you know, Honorable Speaker, ministers, because of the budget process, making budget process statements, they have been shuttling between this House and the other House. And therefore, as soon as we finish with the BPS, we will schedule ministers. The Minister for Roads has the highest number of questions, which are 3 questions that have already been filed. Other ministries have one question. And again, I thought it was not a very efficient use of time to invite a minister to just come address one issue. So we'll probably just begin with the minister in charge of roads and infrastructure when we finish with the budget policy statement. So I invite Honorable Ruto to read the statement by Honorable Pukose. If there are issues that he feels were not addressed by that statement, to raise a question or a statement, and we will occasion the Minister for Health to appear and answer anything else that Honorable Ruto would want answered.
Yes, Ruku?
Honorable Speaker, I listen carefully to the chairman of Departmental Committee of Health, Honorable Pokose. And this matter of health, Mr. Speaker, if it even requires we suspend all the business of this House so that we can be able to get it right as far as health sector is concerned, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Ruku, what you need to do, either file a question, request for a statement, or seek a motion of adjournment as is provided for under the standing orders. And whichever you request, I'll give it consideration. That's how the House functions. Your emotions notwithstanding, the House does not act that way. And I think I've been mentoring you well. You sit with me in my office for many minutes asking me how things are done, and I always tell you. Yes, Bowen?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, almost a week ago, you directed us who are the chairs of departmental committees to consider the budget policy statements, which we are currently doing, Mr. Speaker, and we are almost concluding. Mr. Speaker, you've also had the leader of majority here giving us the business which is coming up next week, including conclusion of the budget policy statements, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, there is an issue which I want you to address, and also it requires the leadership of the National Assembly led by Kimani Ichung'wah, and probably also the leadership of the Senate on this, some of these issues, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday, we met with the Ministry of Water to consider the budget policy statement. And on the same Tuesday, Mr. Speaker, the Senate also wrote to the ministry asking them to appear before the Senate on the same issues of budget policy statement, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, reading Article 95 and 96, the roles of National Assembly and Senate, Mr. Speaker, we don't see where the Senate has come in budget making process. And Mr. Speaker, I don't know, even after summoning the ministries to appear before them, as departmental committees, when we are done, we present our reports to the Budget and Appropriation Committee, which again, it is transmitted to Treasury. I don't know the Committee of Senate, when they are done interrogating the ministries on the budget policy statement, do they take the reports to Budget and Appropriation Committee of this House, or where do they take their reports? So there is a confusion, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, if there is some other laws which requires the senators to ask the ministries to appear before them on budget making process, I think it is good, Mr. Speaker, that we harmonize those laws, and also maybe the leadership of both the houses, the National Assembly and the Senate, so that where that is possible, we can do a joint sitting between the National Assembly Departmental Committee and the Senate. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, it's really very confusing that we are calling the same ministry to appear before us on a budget policy statement, and the senators, again, they are calling on the same. I don't know where they come in. So I'm seeking your direction as our Speaker and also as the Chair of Parliamentary Service Commission. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Who is that? Which member is that? Kerima, I can't see you properly. Yes.
Thank you, Speaker. As I joined to what has been said by my colleague, the Parliament is so much insist of the situation of Article 95 and 96. This is a matter which has been coming before this House a number of times, because as a country, we are pursuing the policy of austerity measures to make sure that we cut costs on unnecessary expenses. The law as it is, Mr. Speaker, sir, can this House spare itself and come out clearly and also advise the executive, because I believe the problems we are undergoing is that it's being entertained by the authorities and those with the powers to execute and implement the Constitution as it is. For the Senate has really assumed the role of this House, duplicating committees, calling committees or calling the agencies and the departments which are not supposed to be appearing before them, and trying to create work which does not exist for themselves, for they are supposed even to be meeting only 2 times per year, only to deliberate on revenue allocation between the central government and the county government. Can it come out clearly? Because there is a lot of confusion in all aspects. Let's come even to marking of where we are parking cars. You find that it's marked, and it's possible it's through the advice of the chairman of the Parliamentary Service Commission. Senators no law even to go and park down there, for they are supposed to be oversighting the county governments, and they shouldn't be seen there more than here. We are bringing them here to live in Nairobi and to work in Nairobi and to work in Nairobi, yet their work is up country. So, Speaker, sir, what my colleague is saying is that something or someone is duplicating work and it's upon us to cut the costs. Are we cutting costs by doing double work by the same Parliament? Speaker, I'm calling upon the House, especially the Executive and the Parliamentary Service Commission led by the Speaker of this House, to see to it that we are not duplicating work anymore. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Honorable Speaker, I think the issue raised by Honorable Kangogo Bowen is quite important. But just as a way of direct answer to Honorable Bowen, the Senate has a role on BPS, but their role is restricted to just one ministry, the Ministry of Finance and National Planning, because they have a role on consideration of the debt management, since debt also touches on counties, and they also have a role on BPS on the matter of division of revenue, because the division of revenue bill is a bill that you all know comes to this House and also goes to the other House. So they have a role. The question, Honorable Speaker, is, and I know, Honorable Speaker, you're a former senator, so I'll be very cautious with my words. But I was just wondering, has it taken the Senate too long to acclimatize themselves with the new constitution and know where their roles are and where their mandate goes up to? Because we have absolutely no problem with the Senate calling or summoning the Minister for Finance to deal with the debt management strategy paper, or even to deal on BPS on matters to do with the division of revenue bill. However, looking at, I just got a copy from the Honorable Kangogo Bowen, signed by the clerk of the Senate, inviting the Minister, the Cabinet Secretary for Water, Engineer Eric Muga, to appear before the committee on Tuesday 25th, on Tuesday 4th March at 11:30 a.m. The agenda of the meeting is to deliberate on the proposed policies, programs, and expenditure ceilings of the state departments under the ministry's purview. The ministries, not the county governments. 2, the implementation status of the financial year 24-25 budget as at 31st December 2024. And Honorable Speaker, just looking at the entire agenda, it is actually misplaced, because this is work that should be done by the Departmental Committee for water and irrigation of the National Assembly. And I want to agree with the Honorable Kerema, it is not just a waste of public resources, but a waste of valuable time of honorable senators and more valuable time of the Cabinet Secretary. But I want to speak to the Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Speaker. If you are a Cabinet Secretary and you have two invitations, one by the departmental committee that oversights you and your ministry, and one from another house that oversights governors and county governments, you have a choice to decide where to appear and to know which side of your bread is buttered. You must know which house can impeach and which house cannot impeach you. And that should make it very easy for any Cabinet Secretary who has an invitation from Senate and from the National Assembly on matters BPS or indeed any other matter. The people who oversight you, the people's representatives, leave alone the representatives, those who represent counties, those who represent the people, when they summon you, have your priorities right. So I would advise this particular Cabinet Secretary, if he has an invitation from the Committee of the National Assembly on Water and Irrigation, and he has another one from the Senate, I am being told to repeat, Honorable Speaker, with your indulgence, if a Cabinet Secretary, particularly this one who has a letter dated 25th February, if you have an invitation from the departmental committee oversighting you as a Cabinet Secretary of the national government, not a CEC of a county government somewhere, of the national government, the National Assembly, and the Senate, please just know which side of your bread is buttered and appear before the house that oversights you. Give it priority over any other house. They can spend their time as they wish. We cannot dictate how they spend their time, Honorable Speaker. But I think to close it, Honorable Speaker, we must tell the executive, especially on matters touching on budget processing, priority must be in the National Assembly. And it's not because we want to fight our colleagues. You know, Honorable Speaker, we have the intention, because you are a former senator and you have led us well, yourself and the Speaker of the Senate, in having a consultative process so that we do not have squabbles between us and the other house. Honorable Speaker, I've had even the issues you had members raise here yesterday on RMLF. Honorable Speaker, it is not that these members control any funds, and members of parliament do not want to control even a single shilling or even a cent of the roads maintenance funds, but we are just protecting our constitutional mandate to oversight national government institutions like KERA, KURA, KENHA, because that is our mandate. And we have not asked for money to go to members of parliament. And I have never had any member of parliament asking for money to go to them, because they don't manage CRC money. It is managed independently by the regional managers in charge of KURA, KERA, KENHA, and they have their procurement teams that procure. Members of parliament have nothing to do with the roads funds. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, it's not that we want to pick quarrels with anyone. We do not want to pick quarrels, but we must remain truthful to our constitution. And I want to believe Senior Counsel Tienda Omolo will agree with me, because he was among the drafters of this constitution, Honorable Speaker. And I can see him raising up his hand, so I rest my case to be held by the Senior Counsel.
Tienda Omolo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the leader of majority, who almost became the leader of minority, has reminded us that you are a former senator, which is true. But I am sure, for now, your allegiance to the Senate is historical, but your allegiance to this House is present, and it carries the day. Mr. Speaker.
And my allegiance to the law and the Constitution is permanent.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, but on that must be tried on an hourly basis. Mr. Speaker, the issue raised by the Honorable Kagogo Bowen goes beyond what he has raised, the budget policy statement. Mr. Speaker, it goes to the jurisdiction of the Houses of Parliament. And I think, and I want to urge you, Mr. Speaker, that you issue an authoritative communication, at least from this House, founded on Article 94, Article 95. Because what I have noticed is a situation of overreaching. It is not just that committee. There are many times, there are many committees in which we serve where a particular government department is supposed to attend, and then we are told there is a simultaneous invitation by another committee of the Senate. And if you examine keenly, you cannot see the nexus between that committee and the work of the counties and the jurisdiction of the Senate. For this House, I believe we have endeavored to confine ourselves to our jurisdiction. When the Constitution says we have no role in the impeachment of governors, this House has never tried to play a role. We watch from afar like the rest of Kenyans. When the Constitution says that in the impeachment of the president or the deputy president, our role is limited to initiation, and we are not the trial chamber, we have restricted ourselves to that initiation. Something that many Kenyans do not understand. When I was out there, many Kenyans were telling me, but how come in the National Assembly you did not give the erstwhile deputy president the opportunity to defend himself? You did not allow lawyers to come. Because they do not understand that ours is restricted to initiation. The Senate is the trial chamber, and we respect that. Reciprocally, the Senate must respect where the jurisdiction lies in the National Assembly. Failure to do so results first in creating difficulties for government to work, because government ministers and PSS and other officials are permanently being invited to the two houses of parliament so that they cannot even do their work. Secondly, it results in a very dangerous situation where you could have one house of parliament making a recommendation A and the other house making the opposite recommendation. And the ultimate effect is to reduce the final effect of parliament as parliament. And that should not be allowed to happen, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it must be remembered that when a committee of this House, just like the Senate, summons an officer of government, they have the powers of the court. But that committee must address itself to why it is given the powers of the court. You cannot have a criminal court summoning someone on an environmental matter, and vice versa. So even the committees of the Senate and the Senate as Senate must first address and ask itself, is this within our power, before we assume the powers of the court? Mr. Speaker, I do wonder that, we have many litigants. Some people call them busybodies, but I do not call them that. We encourage people to go to court. But these free court-going persons, I have never known why they've never challenged the assumption of jurisdiction by the Senate on matters that do not belong to them. But until they do so, Mr. Speaker, I think the commencement point
Many of them are either vexatious or surrogates.
Yes, indeed, many are surrogates. And many are inspired by things other than respect for the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I want to suggest that the starting point to bring sanity is an authoritative communication from you. And that will even help some of these government ministers and PSS, because they do not know where to go for refuge. If they get something like that, they might rely on it and say, we had this communication from the National Assembly, and then it is up to the Senate or anybody else to challenge it in court. I so submit, Mr. Speaker.
Kenan.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that Honorable Otieno Amolo, who was part of the drafters of the current constitution, I believe still has some of the notes that led to the inclusion of the Senate in the current constitution, Mr. Speaker. The Senate that I had in mind, the Senate that came later on towards the tail end of the sitting we have had in Naivasha, and the Senate that I see right now are completely different. And luckily, I'm speaking from experience, because the Senate that we have had in the first Bombas draft, the Senate that ultimately will help in including the current constitution, and the Senate that I see are completely different. The only thing that brings this to the fore, Mr. Speaker, there is an attempt to illegally create a constitutional niche that doesn't exist for the Senate. The Senate is our house, it's one of the houses of parliament. You can be here today as a member of the National Assembly, tomorrow you'll be a senator. We do not want to badmouth them. It's our house. You have been there. It's a respectable house. But I think one thing that we will not accept is to create an avenue for chaos. The technical people at the ministries, whether they are PSCs, CSCs, and COs, Mr. Speaker, are operating in a very difficult environment. And I'm glad that the leader of majority today has spoken about this. Mr. Speaker, it is the high time that we ask the Senate to be accountable to the Constitution and to the rule of law. And that is not, Mr. Speaker, a sign of weakness. It's a sign of nobility and adherence to the rule of law. If today, by the grace of God, and Mr. Speaker, even in our own villages, the person who has the power of the purse, the person who has the power of firing, the person who has the power is the ultimate authority, even in our homes. And therefore, the National Assembly, you have the power of the purse. You have the power to sack and fire. The only thing that is missing, Mr. Speaker, is the flair. And the leader of majority, Mr. Speaker, I want to address him, Mr. Speaker, because he is the appointing authority to so many chairs of committees. And I'm not in any way demeaning. When you sit on your job because of the fear of the unknown, somebody outside there runs away with your mandate. When they run away with your mandate, we run around and say the Senate has run away with our mandate. We want the chairs of committees. Don't be afraid of the leader of majority. Don't be afraid of the leader of minority. Don't be afraid of the whip. Function in line with the mandate of that committee. Even where you want to assist the government, Mr. Speaker, you can still do it within the confines of your mandate. But here we are, Mr. Speaker, today, even issues that are within the confines of the National Assembly committees are being adjudicated, Mr. Speaker, in the Senate, simply because our members have failed to discharge their mandate. That must be addressed. Mr. Speaker, the other bit. You see, right now, this house is being bashed. And I'm glad that you are here. You have seen it. You have been a senator. You have been in the judiciary. You have been in the executive. You are now here. Tomorrow, God knows what you will be. It is the high time that you guide these houses, Mr. Speaker. Guide these houses to a path, a constitutional path, that will respect the mandate of the Senate, that will also respect the mandate of the National Assembly, that will not create. I know over the last 2 years, you have been attempting to avoid that jurisdictional conflict between the Senate and the National Assembly. But this must be reciprocated, Mr. Speaker. It's not coming. I know you have tried. I know there is a bill. What we are approaching right now, Mr. Speaker, is madness. We expect respect. We expect reciprocity. We expect tolerance from our colleagues, so that whoever is a senator also knows that there are colleagues here who have the constitutional mandate to do certain things. Mr. Speaker, finally, on this, we have gone through this constitution for the last 10 years. You remember when we were passing, we said 80% was a good constitution. And I remember the words that we used, 20% were legal. It is time to dissect, go through the 20% that is not helping us in any way, and do away with it and make a constitutional change. Honorable Otiende Amolo and the other legal brains and many others should come forward and bring an amendment. It's not cowardice. It's not naivety to bring those amendments so that we have a country that is run in line with the constitutional provision and everybody respects the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. I beg to submit that this thing, just as the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah has said, the CSCs and the other groups outside there, if you are being forced to execute an illegal mandate, refuse, nothing will happen to you. And that is where we are headed.
Osoro, on the same issue?
Yes, Honorable Speaker. First and foremost, Honorable Speaker, it's interesting to have you preside over when the Senate is being discussed, having served in that house. That really shows a lot of comfort and the independence of institutions. Honorable Speaker, the formation of devolution set out different responsibilities and roles in different structures of governance. And the mandates of each house in the bicameral parliament, Honorable Speaker, is clear in the Constitution of Kenya. I saw yesterday, Honorable Speaker, a senator in the floor of the House use very serious derogatory words, vulgar words, Honorable Speaker, against a minister for failure to appear, for failure to appear before their committee on matters budget policy statements. Honorable Speaker, what, after appearing as a minister before a committee in the Senate, then what? What next? The House of the Senate has no single responsibility as far as budget making process is concerned, Honorable Speaker. That is what came out very clear yesterday, that perhaps they do not know their responsibility when they are equipped with immense work under the counties. Honorable Speaker, I look at it from in a layman's point of view, Honorable Speaker, that while the national government is supposed to, or the National Assembly is supposed to call upon matters on national security, the Senate, alongside with the county assembly, Honorable Speaker, should be calling the members, the county askaris, Honorable Speaker, to ask what happens in the counties. Because what happens as far as devolution is concerned, Honorable Speaker, is bad to say the least. Yesterday we had a discussion, Honorable Speaker. There is war between, the governors have an issue with the National Assembly, the Senate has an issue with the National Assembly, some independent bodies have an issue with the National Assembly. What is this that the National Assembly is not doing right, that the members of the Senate and every other section of government has an issue with? That is why you see also, Honorable Speaker, the Honorable Governors, in conjunction with the Senate, pushing that we have some funds that are under the RMLF fund moved to the county government. When you all know that it is members of parliament and even the members of the public, that you'll need a microscope, Honorable Speaker, to see what the county governments are doing, while everything that is done by CDF is visible in full glare of the people, Honorable Speaker. But you'll need a microscope. And I said here yesterday that, Honorable Speaker, at one point you will see governors, Honorable Speaker, and these I've said in several occasions, moving around in a convoy of 50 vehicles, Honorable Speaker, some 20, some 15 vehicles, Honorable Speaker, that one carries a chair, another one carries a carpet, another one carries goons, another one carries girlfriends, another one chairs. Honorable Speaker, the Senate should be focusing on that. They should be summoning governors and ask them such questions. Why that is happening, Honorable Speaker? Not interfering with the work of the National Assembly, acting ultra-virus beyond their limit, beyond their work, when we are supposed, Honorable Speaker, to have distinct roles. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, we have several matters in court. When we pass legislation here, you see the Senate going to court very, very fast, Honorable Speaker. And I must thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the mediation process that you've been doing between the National Assembly and the Senate. But you'll see them every time and then, time and again, going to court on the matters that we pass in this floor. Any time that we pass or we act beyond our mandate, they go to court. Do they also want us to go to court? We implore upon the cabinet secretaries to ignore some of these summons and know where their place is. Their place is in the National Assembly. When the Senate wants to ask ministers questions, they should call upon the CECs in Nairobi, the CECs in Kajiado, the CECs in Mombasa, and ask them questions. They should have actually called the CEC of Environment in Nairobi to ask them why their government littered a road, Honorable Speaker, and blocked the Kenya Power offices, the Steamer Plaza. That is their role. It is just, and I don't know why the framers of the Constitution, Honorable Speaker, framed it to appear like the Senate is in the upper house, Honorable Speaker, when it is clear that their responsibility is to engage with the county governments, the county askaris. While we call the Inspector General of Police, they should call the county inspectorate with their rungus. When we call the ministers here, they should be busy calling the CECs. When we call anything to do with matters that touch on the national health matters, they should be focusing on calling the clinic officers from the dispensaries. That is where their limits are. They should know their jurisdiction and not interfere with this, Honorable Speaker. I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Elaji, we'll finish there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
After
Mr. Speaker,
Elaji Ocheng, then we close.
sometimes it's very sad for Kenya. Because, you know, when Kenyans were passing this constitution, Mr. Speaker, they thought that when we have two houses and we have county governments, we'll have reduced poverty, we'll have rebuilt our country, Kenya. But it seems every human being, including me, you, Mr. Speaker, when we were in the 13th Parliament, in the Senate, I think I want to thank that Senate because they tried their best to build the foundation of how we can work together in this constitution and ensure the Senate goes within the roles that the constitution has clearly represented in front and told us this is what we are supposed to do in that dispensation. And the National Assembly should do their role within what the Constitution has clearly indicated. But then now we find the Senate that we have now faces this challenge because most of them are young. The Senate House where I was is a place where you must have wisdom on how a country has, not in competition, but to have wisdom for the country to move forward. But today the senators that we have are senators that are supposed to be in this National Assembly. This is their house. That house needs a very different crop. People who have been in this house, who have seen everything that has happened in the country, are supposed to be in the Senate to help navigate where we are now. Today we are in more poverty because also the governors, most of them come from this house and they go become governors. Because even if you tell me they are carrying seats, they are carrying this, you have just come from this house, why can't you be a bit different and do something better? The best, I will go back to what Honorable Karoli Omondi said, it is time we change the constitution, especially in terms of division of revenue, that monies must be divided in the counties to the constituencies. Then we shall give them 10% or 20 or 30 for the administration. The rest must go to development. So I want to tell the Senate also, in all these things after you have done, have you asked yourself, in all your reports in 1 year, what have you delivered? After you have gone through a CS, you have gone through all the questions you are asking, you have gone through the media, the deliverance of that is critical. What is this output that you can put on the table and say, it came from the Senate and we have now changed something from the national government and it's functional? So, Mr. Speaker, I will just request you in a humble way. It is time, again, you sit with the Speaker of the Senate. Let us have a harmony. If you are talking about broad-based and all this, I think the Senate must understand what is broad-based, because now we want development. We are tired of these dramas, Mr. Speaker. I beg you to just ask for that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you so much. Mr. Speaker, the issue dealing with, for me, are both structural, legal, and sometimes have also been fueled by the courts. I've said here, and I want to repeat, Mr. Speaker, that in the US, for over 20 years now, there's no single time when the courts have agreed to preside over any matter taken either by the House of Reps against the Senate or vice versa. More than 20 years. Every time the courts have been asked to preside over any matter between these two, the courts have said, no, these are your matters, deal with them. So, Speaker, in 2013, when the first Senate was inaugurated, so many people ran for senator, only to come to Senate and realize that this is not what they wanted to do. And that's why you saw most of them now running to run for governor. It's because people who run for Senate never understand what the role of Senate is. Most of them, Mr. Speaker. Most of them don't. And that's why they come in and within 2-3 years, they either want to do National Assembly work or they want to be governors. So I think, Mr. Speaker, we need to also do civic education so that those who run for Senate know what they're going into. They should not come to Senate, then realize that, oh, it's only about counties, not about the whole country and all these things. I think we have an issue there that causes problems whenever senators come in and they realize that their job is limited to this particular issue. Mr. Speaker, personally, I've been very impressed by the way you've handled the issue of Senate since you became Speaker. You've tried to steer this House toward that direction. That let's not bash Senate, let's not talk to them as if they are not our brothers. But at some point in terms of Speaker, you will have to put your foot down and say that this is where we draw the line. We will not allow Senate to keep on belittling this House every time in their chambers, Mr. Speaker. It's nauseating. We can't have every single week Senate bashing this Assembly as if there's something we've done to them. Nothing. Mr. Speaker, I want to request you to sit down with your colleague on the other side and let's have some decorum. Let's have a way of dealing, because we are all adults. We all work within the law. It can't go on ad infinitum. That personally, Mr. Speaker, you appointed me now twice to a committee called Mediation Committee. And whenever you go there, Mr. Speaker, we deal with very mundane issues. Issues of ego. Issues of who is big and who is small. Not law, Mr. Speaker. And unless this is sorted out through maybe amendment of Constitution, Mr. Speaker, it will rely upon you as our Speaker to guide us. But I want to implore upon the senators that know your limits, know what the rule says about you as Senate, so that we don't get in confusion every now and then, Mr. Speaker. I beg.
I'll give you direction in due course on this issue, either next week or week after. I've closed that, McLeod. Honorable members, I want to acknowledge in the Speaker's gallery Michinda Boys Secondary School from Molo, Nakuru. In the public gallery, Voice of Kibra students from Kibra, Nairobi. Mailwa Comprehensive School from Kajiado Central, Kajiado. And Mitoone Day Secondary School from Buri, East Meru. On my behalf and on behalf of the House, we welcome all the students and their teachers to the House of Parliament. Next order.
Order number 8, the Gold Processing Bill, National Assembly Bill number 46 of 2023, second reading question to be put.
Members on their feet, take your seats. The unlawful Kamukunji there, disband and take your seats. Is that a member for, that's not Coimbra, is it? No. Honorable members, I now put the question at order number 8, which is that the Gold Processing Bill, National Assembly Bill number 46 of 2023 be now read a second time. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the establishment, composition, functions and management of the Gold Processing Corporation, provide for the application, cancellation and renewal of a gold processing license and for connected purposes. Order number 9, the National Police Service Commission Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 23 of 2024, second reading, resumption of debate.
At order number 9, resumption of debate, records show Honorable Mulanya is in the House. He had 9 minutes to go. He's not in the House. He forfeits his slot. Beatrice Elachi, are you queuing for the police bill?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this amendment bill on the National Police Commission. Mr. Speaker, when I look at what Honorable Masara has done, and I want to thank him, is to now look at the mental health of the police that we are having. And in his memorandum of objects and reasons, he says that the bill recognizes that in the execution of their tasks, police officers work in potentially confusing roles, alternating between law enforcement and public service. And Mr. Speaker, I want to pick the issue of public service. You see, sometimes I know we have really vilified this sector, and especially anyone who asks for a job to be a police officer. And all over the world, if there is a sector that is respected so much, is what and the work that our police officers do every day. And Mr. Speaker, you find sometimes it's very sad the way sometimes we treat our police. Yes, I know individually you'll find others with a lot of challenges, definitely in terms of how they deal with issues. But that does not mean that now we look at the sector and demonize it until we wonder whether these are our brothers, our sisters, and they are the ones who have taken these jobs. They come from our families. And so today, as we talk about mental health, I think they are the most affected in this sector. I know they have challenges of even their salaries. They are the salaried civil servants who I know today are also struggling in the issues that we have, based also teachers. But one thing that I'll remember is the former CS of gender, Margaret Kobia. Margaret Kobia had started a very good program post-COVID to ensure all civil servants will have a place where they can go when they are stressed in a wellness unit. And she started this unit. And I'm hoping in civil service today, this unit is functional, because it was supposed to help every civil servant that has a challenge, that feels stressed, to go and talk to someone just to have their counseling. And that's what the police also needs, Mr. Speaker. And also, Mr. Speaker, today I know there are many other challenges. You see, when you say you have a force that takes care of us, and you find even getting uniforms is a challenge, just getting their boots is a challenge, just ensuring that today I wonder whether they have an insurance cover for themselves and families. You wonder whether the work they do we appreciate. It's a very, very sad scenario when you look at this sector. And so as he does this amendment, Mr. Speaker, one of the things that we need to really push, even as the National Assembly, is to ensure the environment each police officer is working in is an environment that can be better. I want to thank the Deputy DIG when he was acting, Mr. Speaker. Masengeli was able to try even just to build the promotions. And you would see all of them now getting excited and saying they would wish to work, because he came in and started. And Kanja has also picked it. They are really trying to see how do we promote officers who came in 10 years, 15 years, and they've never seen a promotion. I would encourage them to continue doing that. But the other thing we need to help in assisting also, even as we talk about this, is their welfare. Today, I'll give you an example, Mr. Speaker. The officers, and I'm just saying as an example, the officers who man State House Gate, for example, remember they are GSUs. And I know they have challenges. And I want to plead even with the controller, that State House controller, to just look at it, look at their children, look at the challenges they are facing in terms of, we have many young children and many young students who live inside State House, but I know they don't know this other side because their fathers are the officers of government, but they can also receive bursaries wherever they are. They are in my constituency, and I feel they deserve to get bursaries, they deserve to get that presidential bursary, and they deserve also, when they go out, to be paid their night outs, and on time. I know, I'm not just talking about them now, I'm talking of all that sector. Most of them find it very difficult to get even their night outs in time. And so if we want to see even this civil service coming back and working hard to see a better Kenya, then we must also always have a good way of doing the incentives. So those are some of the things that bring in also these stresses. Honorable Masara is also talking about how the Oversight Authority of the National Commission on Human Rights, the Director of Public Prosecution, or the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, as a case may be, where necessary. The same way, for me, if I'm asked today, the same way the military has its martial courts, why can't we have a martial courts for some of these officers? Mr. Speaker, you realize sometimes in the environment they are working, and you are caught up on exchange of fire. And you are dealing with also people, let us agree, that who are on very high crime also. And so it is important to deal with them, knowing they have been going through a very stressful way of doing these things. And when they find themselves maybe in a situation like that and they are called by IPOA or whatever, let them be given an environment to explain themselves. I would tell you, Mr. Speaker, you find some of the officers were there protecting lives, but today they have lost their jobs because they protected lives somewhere. And because they don't have that opportunity to come back and get an appeal, to just explain themselves, even if he's going home, let him go home with dignity, having explained and had himself, as Article 50 of the Constitution says. You find, Mr. Speaker, there are some who are very stressed, especially, you remember when you come out of the force from the training, the first places you are taken is in the volatile areas. So you are taken to, let's say, on the borders of Mandera, on the borders of Tana River, where there's very, very high terrorism and all that. And some years ago, you remember, Mr. Speaker, we lost very young officers who had just come from the training and had just entered into Tana River, and all of them were killed by terrorists there. And today we have others who have stayed in those areas even more than 7 to 8 years, Mr. Speaker. They are just begging, we have done our part, we've been here ever since I came out of training, I am here. That person is stressed, needs a place where psychologically can just be supported. And then I am pleading also with the force and the commission. Why we brought in a commission, we thought it will take better care to this force than the days it was without a commission. But then now when you look at it, Mr. Speaker, I think they are even wondering why they really had the commission now. Because most of their issues are the issues that they are going through, a lot of things. In that balancing and all these things of you balance the promotions, balance the appointments, knowing very well this was a force that one was always on the GSU side and the other one was the police itself. Now we've merged them together, Mr. Speaker. But yeah, there's still competition, intra-competition inside there. And many others, the lower ones are really suffering on that. So as we look at it, and it is something that Masara is also talking about, that let us try and see if we can promote the values of principle referred to in Article 10 and 232. Mr. Speaker, even today, if we had better forces, today we would be having better values in our Constitution. With those few remarks, I beg to support Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable James Nyikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I rise to support this bill, Mr. Speaker. The bill on the National Police Service Commission Amendment Bill of 2024, whose objective, Mr. Speaker, is to provide for mental wellness and mental well-being of police officers. Mr. Speaker, the issue of mental health among security officers, particularly police officers, is now an acknowledged fact that there is a problem. And this fact has been borne out by what we experience very often. The number of suicides we read in the newspapers that are publicized, the number of homicides, the number of officers that kill their seniors are publicized every day. And those that we read in the papers, Mr. Speaker, are probably just a tip of the iceberg. If some go to the extent that actually they kill themselves and kill their officers, or do both, what is happening to those who are actually suffering silently? What is happening to their families? because if people are affected mentally, obviously their families suffer. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, this is a matter that needs to be addressed, and therefore this bill comes at the right moment. Mr. Speaker, it is not only the officers that suffer, nor is it their families only that suffer, but Mr. Speaker, the public that they interact with. Mr. Speaker, the handling of people who come into contact with the police is important. Although it is not documented of what happens quietly, but we know sometimes the brutality that the police officers met out. And we may start to think that probably that is how police officers are. But Mr. Speaker, this may be just an expression of mental illness that is not looked at. Because sometimes it looks pathological what they do, and we blame them. But we do not realize that these people may actually be in need of help. It therefore possible that a number of officers are operating while actually are unwell and in need of mental treatment. Mr. Speaker, we ask ourselves, why is it so that we have officers that we have come to suspect are not well? We just think of some conditions, but they have not really actually been documented. That has not been taken. The magnitude of the problem not been brought out. Mr. Speaker, this bill, if implemented as proposed, may actually address these issues. What is probably obvious, what may be obvious to us, do we do character suitability before we get the police officers into recruitment and into training? And what is the curriculum of their training to protect them from the nature of work that they do? If you look at their working conditions, Mr. Speaker, they work long hours. They work in different conditions. Mr. Speaker, they are actually faced with horrendous circumstances. What they go through, they are often in a life and a death situation. People cannot remain mentally well if every time they are out in operations, their life is in danger. Mr. Speaker, the high tension that they face all the times, the physical trauma that they are actually faced with. Mr. Speaker, we know instances where whole troops of police officers have actually been eliminated. What happens to those who survive? Do they remain well? Mr. Speaker, even what they witness when we call them to crime scenes, they find mutilated bodies. Mr. Speaker, do they remain well? Do they get counseling? Do we do psychoanalysis of what the effect of this are? So this psychological trauma they suffer through is something we need to really look into. The result, Mr. Speaker, is I believe that a lot of our officers are actually working when they actually have severe depression that expresses itself in what we see like homicide or suicide. Now, post-traumatic stress disorder, Mr. Speaker, anybody who is exposed to extreme horrendous conditions, they suffer and they need to be looked after, they need care. Are these available to our officers as it is now? So, Mr. Speaker, I won't be surprised if amongst police officers, you probably have higher incidence of even physical illnesses like high blood pressure. They can develop personality disorders like emotional numbness, psychopathic tendencies, and we'll just blame them without actually realizing that they need care. On top of that, the pay that they get, there's always been an issue of the pay that the police officers get, the houses that they live in. And Mr. Speaker, I'm quite sure that there are no systems that are in place to actually look after them in these concepts. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. The creation, the establishment of psychosocial units and formulation of programs to promote the mental health and well-being of police officers as proposed in clause 3 is something that actually we must support. To provide them with mental health and wellness resources. I mean, they get well. And you know, mental illness is probably one of the most difficult health conditions to address and most expensive and tends to be chronic once it sets in. Do they have appropriate health facilities that look after that? I know there is a hostel that has been put up for the police officers, but we just see a new building. It has not even been operationalized. So, Mr. Speaker, I think the need, as has been put in this bill, that every county should establish a well-equipped centers or offices or camps or in training colleges that deal with this matter is also something I will support. So in all, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill, and I think all our colleagues should support it. And it's not only support it and so that it becomes part of what is available in our legal system, but actually provide the funds that actually look after them, starting with their working conditions, their pay, the psychosocial support, the treatment that they get. It will all need funds, and actually this should provide the basis of that funding. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Let's have the Honorable Paul Murigi, and then if you want to speak on this.
Yes,
and
Mr.
then
Speaker.
Farah Mohammed to follow.
Yeah.
Proceed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me opportunity to speak on this bill. Mr. Speaker, this is a well thought out bill, Mr. Speaker, to establish a psychosocial support center so that we can maintain the mental wellness of our officers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill is trying to curb wastage of resources or wastage of the government resources of recovering or of maybe doing the litigation which are done or the damages which are done by the officers when they are not in good mind, Mr. Speaker. If these centers will be established in every county, our officers, Mr. Speaker, will get a good place where they can go and refresh their minds, Mr. Speaker, and go back to their working station, Mr. Speaker, well fresh, Mr. Speaker. Since when the officers, Mr. Speaker, are not in the right mind, Mr. Speaker, they would do something which may tend to seem as if those officers are not in right mind, Mr. Speaker. And many people start accusing them that, Mr. Speaker, they are using excessive force, Mr. Speaker, whereas they are suffering from stress. So if these centers will be there, Mr. Speaker, will help the officers to reduce those stress, Mr. Speaker, and motivate them to do their work even more better, Mr. Speaker. These centers also, Mr. Speaker, will reduce the cases of suicidal, Mr. Speaker, cases which we have encountered from many police officers, Mr. Speaker, where they take their own lives, Mr. Speaker, where they even massacre the people they are supposed to protect, Mr. Speaker, because of the stress which they normally come across. But through these centers, Mr. Speaker, where the counselors will be provided by the government, Mr. Speaker, our police officers will work without causing unnecessary unnecessary things, Mr. Speaker. Also, Mr. Speaker, through the counseling, it will improve the morale of the police officers to work for this republic, Mr. Speaker. Since if you are demotivated, working would be very difficult for one to do. But if someone is motivated through that counseling, Mr. Speaker, the officers will be even more productive in their work, Mr. Speaker. So this is one of the best bills, Mr. Speaker, which will help this country to save on most resources, Mr. Speaker. Because the proposed amount to build these centers, Mr. Speaker, is only 950 million, Mr. Speaker. This 950 million, Mr. Speaker, is just a drop in our ocean, Mr. Speaker. Since the government is spending a lot of money in defending those cases or the cases which have been done by the officers or the stressed officers to defend them in the court, Mr. Speaker. But if we have these centers, they will help us, Mr. Speaker, to save some resources. Mr. Speaker, also, this will put Kenya in the realm of Africa, Mr. Speaker, whereby we will be having the best practice within Africa, Mr. Speaker. Because internationally, Mr. Speaker, we have seen in Canada, in the United States, and even United Kingdom, Mr. Speaker, they have these centers, Mr. Speaker, where their officers, Mr. Speaker, are counseled. They are oriented with what is happening, Mr. Speaker. They are refreshed even after encountering those crimes, Mr. Speaker, or the terrorists, Mr. Speaker, or even the family matters, Mr. Speaker, whereby they are counseled and then they go back to their normal stations, Mr. Speaker, of working. So Kenya will be one of the best countries within this African region, Mr. Speaker. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support this bill. Thank you.
Very well. The Honorable Farah Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I weigh in on this issue as a son of a policeman. Mr. Speaker, I grew up in police lines. My father was recruited into the Colonial Police Force in 1956, and I grew up in police lines. Mr. Speaker, I visit very often the house where we grew up. My father, my late sister, and my other two brothers. And it's the same room in Garissa Administration Police Lines, which was occupied by one family. We were living in one room. The room was both a kitchen, a bedroom, and our sitting room, my study room, everything. And my dad used to spend most of the nights outside there, where Amat would be there. Mr. Speaker, this time, when I went to visit the same place, it is two officers who are living in the same room. It hasn't changed. 63 years after independence, or 64 years.
Order, Honorable Member, for Honorable Member for Kericho. Please, is that Kericho? Narok, please. We have to just respect the House. Come back and do the correct thing. you cannot afford to prejudice the House that much. Go back and then just do the correct thing. Thank you. You may proceed, Honorable Farah.
Mr. Speaker, during those days, I remember police officers used to be given ration by the government. And this is a rollover from the colonial practice. They used to be given corned beef. They used to be given fish, sardines, I remember very well, in tin fish. And they used to go and collect the ration for every family from a government distributor. And for the officers who come from those pastoral areas, they used to be given debts. And ghee, literally ghee. Oil for that matter. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this with a very heavy heart, that our policemen were better off under the colonial administration than they are now under independent Kenya. The salaries, the remunerations, the living conditions, the risks they're supposed to undertake, the lack of insurance on their debts when they die in the line of action, and the horrible state in which they live, particularly when it comes to housing, Mr. Speaker, are bad. It pricks the conscience of everybody, including myself, when I see the kind of conditions the men and women who are supposed to be awake the whole night to protect us, to make sure that we're safe, are living themselves in the most unsafe conditions. Mr. Speaker, it's no wonder that now we are asking for psychosocial intervention, because, Mr. Speaker, protect me from the ladies where he's making a lot of, starting with the Honorable
Elachi. Honorable Elachi,
you are very
manage
loud
your
with your group,
consultations.
Elachi.
You may
You sit
proceed,
somewhere.
Honorable Farah.
And Fatuma. Anyway,
Honorable Farah,
I'm not on the chair, thank you.
Allow me to run the House. You are not on the seat. Okay. You may proceed.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Speaker, I remember those days, and I want this for the benefit of the young people who never witnessed that. Not only did my mother used to go into a government distributor and pick the ration from there, which was given to every police officer. At that time, which is basically a rollover from how the colonialists treated our policemen. My mother used to go to a butchery every day and pick a pound of meat so that we have a balanced diet. We used to be given corned beef from the Kenya Meat Commission those days. We had debts. The children of police officers and the police officers themselves used to have balanced diets. Today, we see a police officer on the beat from morning until evening. Nobody cares whether he has had a cup of tea. Nobody cares whether he has had lunch. The presumption is that his lunch or his dinner, he will have it at home. To bash police officers. We bash, I still have a problem with Beatrice Elachi because she's very loud. Anyway.
Honorable Farah, proceed. That's a moderated consultation.
This is interesting. I expect utmost silence, yes. And that's why I don't think Beatrice Elachi is soft. She's still loud.
Order.
I'm not addressing her. I'm saying she's loud.
Order, Honorable Farah. Order, Honorable Farah. You are a ranking member.
Okay,
and I expect
Honorable
better.
Speaker, I will proceed with the contributions.
I expect better way of handling this matter. Proceed.
Proceed. I will proceed, yes, indeed. Honorable Speaker, there are 3 professions in this country where the absolute sacrifice is done by the people who man those professions. You see Kenyans, including Parliament here, always castigating our teachers. And we know what teachers go through to get us to be what we are. You see them always complaining about our doctors and our nurses. And you have to understand, I come from a medical family myself, for you to understand, when somebody is called on a call at 3 o'clock in the morning, a lady with a breastfeeding child, and she has to go to hospital and can stay in hospital until the following day at around midday or after, even in the afternoon. Those professions, our doctors, our policemen, our nurses, our teachers, they deserve better than we give them right now as a country. So we will try and deal with the psychosocial, and I support this bill right now here to make that amendment itself to the act, to the parent act, to offer that. But what psychosocial intervention will help you against hunger, the banks of hunger? An officer who has been in the beat from the whole night and has not had dinner and cannot take out money out of his pocket and eat in a restaurant because it's not good enough. He needs to feed his family in the house. They earn so little, so paltry. So it's my humble plea to this house and to this country. Let's take good care of our officers, police officers. They work in such areas like Northeastern Province where there are IEDs planted by terrorists and lose their lives in an environment some of them have never seen before. We don't compensate them that well. When they die, their children suffer because there is no provision, there's no fund to take care of the education of those children or to take care of the welfare of those families. As a parliament, I'm very happy because I've seen many members of parliament. Mr. Speaker, can I beg you to give me an additional 5 minutes if you don't mind? Okay. Now, we are members of parliament.
We are giving you 1 minute.
What will you do with the rest? There's not very few people. Anyway, too few of them are willing to. But anyway, let me say, we as members of parliament are so conscious of what happens to our own colleagues when they come in for one term and they lose out. And we see them out in the streets because we are pushing for them to get a certain minimum pension. That's why right now we want to contribute towards an insurance system which is going to give us at least a guarantee for our own health when we are out of parliament. That when you are out of parliament, you can still enjoy the medical cover that we have now. Think of a police officer, a young man, 30 years old, 28 years old, killed in the streets of Nairobi with a young family. His wife is 4 or 5 years younger than him. He's got 2 or 3 children himself. And here they are as orphans. Do we have a system to take care of those children? Do we have that? We don't. We don't. I think it's a pity that this bill, at the stage it is and how limited it is in terms of the provision of the psychosocial services to the officers.
Very well. You have had your bite. The Honorable Adan Kenan, another ranking member. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the definition of a police officer is a law enforcement officer. And pursuant to Article 243 of the current Constitution, the functions of the Kenya Police Service, Mr. Speaker, includes the provision of assistance to the public when the public is in need, maintenance of law and order, preservation of peace, protection of life and property, investigation of crimes, collection of criminal intelligence, prevention and detection of crime, apprehension of offenders, and the enforcement of law and order, and performance of any other duty that may be prescribed by the Inspector General of Police. Mr. Speaker, this bill is a timely one, and I want to thank the Honorable Masara for thinking out of the box and coming up with this pivotal legislative proposal aimed at introducing far-reaching reforms to the Police Service Commission in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, the bill seeks to enhance the welfare, the professionalism, and accountability of the police force, while fostering community relations. Mr. Speaker, one of the key provisions